What would you do if the daughter you trusted raised her glass to celebrate your downfall? My name is Daniel Harris. I'm 62, a man who built his life with hard work, sacrifice, and honor. And yet, inside my own home, I uncovered a betrayal so deep it nearly destroyed me. You won't believe what I did next. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe and tell me in the comments. Where are you watching from? 3 weeks of silence. That's where my story begins. Not the kind of silence you choose, like when you turn off the TV and enjoy a quiet night. No, this was a prison. A silence that chained me inside my own body, cut me off from the world, and left me alone with nothing but my thoughts. My name is Daniel Harris. I'm 62 years old, and I used to think I'd seen it all. I buried my wife, raised 2 kids, worked 40 years until my hands were calloused and my back bent. I thought nothing could surprise me anymore. But the silence? It stripped me bare, and it revealed something about my own family that I never wanted to know. It happened on a Saturday morning in Austin. The sky was clean, blue, perfect. My buddies had dragged me out for a hike in Barton Creek Greenbelt. I almost said no. I had chores, bills, the usual excuses, but something inside me said, go. I should have stayed home. One careless climber, one loose rock, and everything changed. The boulder slammed the ground beside me with a crack like a gunshot. Pain shot through my head. And then, nothing. I couldn't hear my friends screaming my name. Couldn't hear the birds. Couldn't hear my own panicked breath. I staggered, reaching for something real. But the world had gone mute. I was trapped inside glass. The hospital called it acoustic trauma. Temporary, maybe permanent. They shrugged, muttered about nerves and cochlea and healing time. All I heard, if I could call it that, was, maybe you'll never hear again. That night, lying in a sterile bed, I thought, this is it. This is my new life. A man who once loved music, loved the sound of rain on the tin roof, reduced to silence. I wanted to scream, but even my own voice was gone to me. And then came Emily, my daughter. 34, sharp, headstrong. She swept into my house with grocery bags, a notebook, that determined smile. I'll take care of you, Dad. That's what I read on her lips. She moved into the guest room like she belonged there, cooking, writing notes, tapping my shoulder when she wanted my attention. I should have felt grateful. I tried. I even wrote her a thank you note on day 3. I don't know what I'd do without you. She hugged me, held me so tight I could barely breathe. But the look in her eyes, something flickered there. Irritation? Resentment? I told myself I imagined it. But the silence made me see things differently. You strip away sound, you start noticing details. The quick roll of her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. The late-night phone calls in hushed voices just outside my door. The way she sighed, deep, exasperated, every time she helped me across the kitchen. At the time, I pushed it aside. She's tired, I told myself. She gave up her life to help me. Don't be ungrateful. But in my gut, something twisted. I tried to remind myself of the little girl she used to be, the one who baked me a lopsided cake for Father's Day when she was 10, smearing frosting across her cheeks as she grinned. The one who used to sit on my shoulders during the county fair, pointing at the fireworks like they were magic made just for her. That girl had looked at me with pure trust, pure love. I clung to those memories, desperate to believe she was still in there somewhere. Every day became a war. Breakfast was torture. She would mouth words, scribble notes. I'd nod, pretend I understood. But when I sat alone at the table staring at the empty chair where my wife once sat, the silence crushed me. No radio, no clinking silverware, no footsteps. Just emptiness. At night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to remember the sound of my wife's laughter. It faded more every day, like sand slipping through my fingers. By week 2, I started to break. I smashed a glass in the kitchen just to see the sound, to feel something. But there was nothing. My hands bled, and Emily rushed in, her lips moving fast, her eyes sharp with something between anger and pity. She cleaned me up without a word, left me with a pad of paper, and shut the door harder than she meant to. I saw it in her face. She was exhausted. But I still clung to the belief she was helping out of love. Because the alternative, that she didn't want to be there, was unbearable. And then came the night I almost gave up. The silence pressed on me so hard I thought about ending it. I walked out onto the porch, bottle in hand, and stared at the dark Texas sky. I whispered, not that I could hear it, "Margaret, if you're up there, give me something, anything." The stars just stared back. I felt smaller than I ever had in my life. But sometimes, the universe throws you a rope when you least expect it. 3 weeks in, I woke in the hospital to a sound. A faint beep. My eyes flew open. The heart monitor. Beep. Beep. I thought I was dreaming. Then I heard footsteps, the rustle of papers, a nurse humming under her breath. I sat up, tears flooding my eyes. Sound. Real sound. After weeks of torture, it poured back in like a flood breaking a dam. The doctor grinned. "Daniel, your hearing is back. Completely." I couldn't stop laughing. Every little noise was a miracle. The scratch of a pen, the squeak of shoes, my own ragged breath. I pressed my palms to my ears like I could hold on to it forever. I left the hospital that day driving with the windows rolled down, soaking in every honk, every engine rumble, every child's shout. The world was alive again, and all I could think was how Emily would react when I walked through the door and said her name. She'd cry. She'd hug me. We'd finally laugh together again. But standing there in my driveway, staring at the white farmhouse I'd built with my wife, something strange settled in my chest. A hesitation. Like some part of me already knew the truth waiting inside. I shook it off, grabbed my bag, and marched up the steps. I was going to surprise her. I was going to show her the miracle. I opened that door, and the sound of voices came rushing at me. Laughter. Words sharp as knives. I froze, my hand still on the knob. And in that instant, my joy twisted into something darker. Because what I heard wasn't relief. It wasn't love. It was betrayal. And that was the first moment I realized silence hadn't been the real prison. The real prison was what my daughter thought she could say when she believed I couldn't hear. That was the night everything changed. That was the night I learned what kind of daughter Emily truly was. The moment I stepped inside my house, sound hit me like a tidal wave. The clatter of dishes, the hiss of running water, voices drifting from the kitchen. I froze. For the first time in weeks, I could hear everything, every word, every laugh, every secret. And what I heard burned me alive. Emily's voice, sharp and careless, cut through the air. "God, I can't take this anymore. That old man is back, and I feel like I've been shackled for 3 weeks, pretending to care about him, writing stupid notes. Do you know how exhausting it is?" My chest tightened. I pressed my back against the wall, gripping the doorknob until my knuckles turned white. My daughter. My only daughter. Then Brian's voice joined in, smooth, calculated. "Relax, Em. We're almost there. Hillcrest Haven takes patients like him all the time. Once he's in there, you won't have to waste your life babysitting. We'll finally be free." Hillcrest Haven, a nursing facility. My body went cold. Emily laughed, a bitter, ugly sound I had never heard from her before. Free? I've already wasted 3 weeks. 3 weeks of playing the perfect daughter, spoon-feeding him, smiling while he sits there deaf and clueless. Honestly, it's pathetic. He just nods like some sad puppet while I write everything down for him. The words slammed into me harder than any rock on that hiking trail. Pathetic. A puppet. That's what she thought of me. And then Brian spoke again, his tone low and scheming. It's not just about getting rid of him. Think about the property. This land is worth a fortune. Once we sell, we could move to Dallas, maybe even buy that townhouse we looked at. And with the right renovations, we're talking 6 figures in profit. My heart lurched. The farmhouse. My wife Margaret and I had built it board by board, brick by brick. Every corner of this land carried her memory. She died here, and they were already planning to gut it, to cash in on her grave. Emily sighed like a woman who'd been carrying an unbearable weight. I can't stand even looking at him anymore. Every time he smiles at me with those tired eyes, I just see a burden. That's all he is now, Brian. A burden. My knees almost gave out. The hallway spun. I wanted to shout, to burst into the kitchen and demand how she could call me that. But then Brian's next words stopped me cold. Dr. Morales owes me a favor. I talked to him last week. He can write up a dementia evaluation. Something clean, official. Once that's in place, Daniel won't have a choice. We'll move him into Hillcrest and take control of everything. Dementia? They were plotting to erase me. Emily gasped, then whispered like she'd just been given the key to freedom. Are you serious? He can actually do that? Of course, Brian said. All we need to do is create a pattern. Misplace his pills, leave the stove on, make notes about him being confused. In a month, it'll look like he can't handle himself. By summer, the house will be ours. I leaned harder against the wall, my pulse hammering. They weren't waiting for me to die. They were building a case, brick by brick, to lock me away and strip me of everything. For a moment, rage consumed me. I imagined storming in, slamming my fists on the table, screaming that I wasn't deaf, that I'd heard every single word. But then Emily spoke again, and her words cut so deep I couldn't move. I'm tired of living like this. Every time I walk into that kitchen, I want to scream. Do you know how humiliating it is, writing notes for a man who doesn't even know what year it is? I'm 34, Brian. I should be building my life, not babysitting an old man who's too stubborn to fade away quietly. The blood in my veins turned to ice. My daughter didn't just want me out of her way. She wanted me erased. Brian chuckled, pouring himself a drink from the bar I had built with my own hands. Don't worry, babe. By the end of the year, you'll never have to write another note. He'll be tucked away in Hillcrest, and we'll be planning vacations instead of care schedules. Emily clinked her glass against his. To freedom. I bit down on my tongue until I tasted blood. My own daughter, my flesh and blood, was toasting to my imprisonment. And then, as if the knife needed another twist, Brian added, Think about the money, Em. The land, the furniture, the antiques, his savings, the retirement account. Once we get control, we're talking over $500,000 easy. And that's just the start. Emily's voice softened, almost tender. We'll finally have the life we deserve. I wanted to collapse right there, but something inside me hardened instead. A new thought burned through the despair. If they think I'm deaf, I'll let them keep thinking it. Let them talk. Let them reveal every piece of their plan. And when the time comes, I'll be ready. I forced myself to back away quietly, every step deliberate. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, my legs trembling but my mind sharper than it had been in years. In that moment, I made a vow. I would not confront them now. I would not show my hand. I would become the deaf old man they thought I was. I would smile, nod, play dumb. And while they plotted my downfall, I would build my revenge. As I sat on the edge of my bed, the voices from the kitchen carried up through the heating vent. Emily laughed, the sound of a woman celebrating a victory she thought she already had. Brian talked about contractors, renovations, profits. They thought the war was over. They thought I had already lost. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. That night, staring at the photo of Margaret on my nightstand, I whispered to her memory. They think I'm finished. They think I'm deaf, blind, and broken. But I'm going to show them. I'm going to show them both. And for the first time since silence took me, I didn't feel helpless. I felt dangerous, because I had heard the truth. And the truth was the sharpest weapon I had ever held. The next morning, I woke up with a new role carved into my bones. The deaf old man. It wasn't a mask I wanted, but it was the mask I needed. Every gesture, every stumble, every clueless smile became part of the act. If Emily and Brian thought I was a helpless fool, then that was exactly who I'd be, until I had enough rope to strangle their plans. I shuffled into the kitchen that morning, dragging my slippers across the tile just a little louder, letting my movements look clumsy, unsure. Emily was at the stove, Brian sipping coffee at the table. They glanced up at me, eyes sharp, then softened into performance smiles. "Morning, Dad," Emily said loudly, exaggerating every syllable, her lips stretched in fake warmth. I tilted my head like I hadn't caught it. She sighed, scribbled on the pad she kept nearby. "Breakfast?" I nodded like a grateful child. Inside, my blood boiled. Outside, I smiled. The charade became my daily routine. They spoke freely, assuming I couldn't catch a thing. But my ears, my perfectly healed, sharpened ears, drank in every word. At night, when the house went quiet, I opened the leather-bound journal Margaret had once given me and wrote it all down. Every insult, every plan, every figure they calculated when they thought I was deaf. I wrote with the precision of an engineer laying out blueprints. This wasn't just revenge. It was evidence. The cracks in their mask grew wider each day. Emily hovered with notes and fake tenderness, but her frustration leaked through. Once, she shoved the pad across the counter too hard, nearly knocking over my coffee. I played dumb, smiling like it hadn't happened, but in my journal that night, I wrote, "Impatience boiling. Act still holding." Brian was worse. He treated me like I was already gone. Loud, careless conversations in front of me, confident I couldn't understand. One afternoon, I sat in my armchair pretending to nap. He leaned against the mantel, phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah, man, we're close. House is easily worth $500,000. Once the old man's out, we'll renovate the barn. Maybe list the whole place as an estate rental. I'll be sitting pretty by Christmas." He laughed, a cruel, greedy laugh that made my fists clench. I almost blew my cover, but I forced myself to breathe, slow and steady, like a sleeping fool. But the real turning point came late one night. I'd crept downstairs for water, moving silently, when I noticed a glow under the study door. My study. I pressed my ear against the wood, heart hammering. Papers rustled, drawers opened. Brian's voice, low and sharp. "It's not in here. Check the safe." Emily's voice, tight with frustration. "Damn it, it has to be. He's too old to hide things anywhere else." They were hunting my will. I backed away slowly, careful not to creak the floorboards. Back in my room, I sat in the dark, the truth heavy on my chest. They weren't just planning for my future. They were trying to erase me from it altogether. The next morning, I planted a trap. I forgot to spin the dial on the safe, left it unlocked, but with nothing inside but old tax papers. That night, through the thin walls, I heard the metal click open. A pause. Then Brian's angry hiss. "Nothing. Just junk." Emily snapped back. "He's smarter than we thought. We'll need Morales to speed things up." I almost laughed. They thought I was smarter? They had no idea how much. That was the moment I called Wallace. My hands shook as I dialed his number from the burner phone I kept hidden in my nightstand. He picked up groggy, his voice cautious. "Daniel? It's late." "I need a new will," I whispered. "Everything goes to Matthew. Emily gets a single dollar. Actually, make it 1,000. Enough to sting. Enough to remind her why." "Daniel, are you sure about this? It's a drastic move." "I'm not just sure. I've never been clearer in my life." There was silence, then a long exhale. "All right. Come by tomorrow. We'll draft it." I hung up, heart pounding. For the first time since regaining my hearing, I felt a flicker of control. A weapon in my hand, forged from their own betrayal. But keeping up the act was exhausting. The next morning, Emily handed me a note that read, "Doctor appointment scheduled. Checkup for your condition." I nodded, gave her a grateful smile, but in my head, I wrote another line in the journal. "She's setting the stage. Paper trail for Morales." Brian, meanwhile, tested me. At dinner, he asked loudly, "Think the old man suspects anything?" His eyes flicked to me. I forced a blank stare, spooning stew into my mouth like I hadn't heard. Emily smirked, her hand brushing his under the table. "No, he's clueless. Just look at him." I smiled, chewing slowly, swallowing poison with every bite. Days blurred into each other, more whispered conversations, more slips of their mask. Emily snapped once, scribbling too fast on the pad. "Take your damn pills before you forget again." Then she caught herself, forced a smile, crossed out the words, and wrote, "Please take your medicine, Dad." I gave her a soft nod, like I believed her kindness. But I wrote the truth down later. They're fabricating confusion, planting evidence. The final straw before I acted came on a Sunday night. I pretended to doze in the recliner while they whispered in the kitchen. Emily's voice floated clear through the vent. 2 more weeks. Morales signs the papers, and he's out. Then it's our life, Brian. Finally ours. Brian chuckled. "Hell, I'll give it 1 week. The old man looks half dead already." I felt something inside me snap. They thought they had time. They thought I was a ghost haunting my own house. But I wasn't dead yet. I wasn't even close. That night, I set my plan in motion. I gathered receipts, bank statements, the journal. I packed them neatly into a folder. Tomorrow, I'd walk into Wallace's office and sign my future back into my own hands. Upstairs, I stood at the window, watching Emily's car lights fade down the driveway as she and Brian left for the store. My reflection in the glass looked older, harder, sharper. "They think you're finished," I whispered to Margaret's memory, "but they just handed you the fight of your life." And with that, the deaf old man smiled, because the act was almost over, and the reckoning was about to begin. The trap had to be perfect. Not sloppy, not rushed, precise. If I was going to pull the mask off Emily and Brian, it needed to happen in a way that left no room for doubt. They thought they were clever. They thought I was deaf, clueless, a relic they could shuffle off to Hillcrest Haven while they pocketed my life. What they didn't know was that I'd already been to Wallace's office. The will was rewritten, signed, sealed, witnessed. My son Matthew in Denver now held everything. The farm, the savings, the land. Every bit of it. Emily? She had $1,000 scar carved into the paper, a reminder of what she'd thrown away. Now all I needed was to watch their faces burn when they realized it. I started with the suitcases. 2 of them, old leather ones Margaret and I had used on our anniversary trips. I dragged them from the attic, wiped off the dust, and filled them with Emily's clothes and Brian's gadgets. Every designer blouse, every golf club, every useless luxury they had scattered across my home went into those bags. I set them by the front door, perfectly visible. The message was silent, but clear. Someone was leaving this house. But that wasn't enough. I wanted proof. Words on paper were good, but voices, their own voices, were stronger. So I slid a recorder into the bookshelf behind the couch. Perfect angle. Perfect range. If they celebrated my supposed surrender, the whole world would hear exactly what they were. By the time they returned from their errands, I was sitting in my recliner with the newspaper. Every muscle in my body wound tight. The key turned in the lock. The door creaked open, and shopping bags hit the hardwood with a thud. Then, silence. Emily's voice broke first, breathless with shock. "Brian! Look! The suitcases. He packed. He's actually leaving." Brian's laugh followed, sharp and triumphant. "You're kidding! He's rolling over? Just like that?" Emily's voice cracked with relief, the kind of joy that stabs like a knife. "Oh my God, this is perfect. We don't even have to push Morales. We don't need the evaluation. He's giving up on his own." I held still behind the newspaper, every nerve screaming to move, but I let them dig deeper. Brian's footsteps paced across the floor. "We did it, Em. It's done. Think about it. We can start the renovations next week. Tear down that barn, refinish the floors, list it on the market by summer." Emily laughed, wild, unrestrained. 600,000, minimum. Maybe more if we flip the land. We'll be free. Finally, free. Free. That word again. Freedom for them meant exile for me. I folded the newspaper down slowly, stood, and let my voice cut the air. "No! You're leaving my house." The room froze. Emily spun around, her face draining to ash. Brian stopped mid-step, his jaw slack. "Dad?" Emily whispered, trembling. You can hear?" "Every word since I came home." Their masks shattered in an instant. Emily stumbled forward, tears springing to her eyes, hands reaching out. "Wait, it's not what you think. We were just venting. You don't understand." Brian's face hardened into a sneer. "This doesn't change anything. You can't prove a damn thing. You're senile, Daniel. No one will believe you." I smiled coldly, the first real smile I'd felt in months. "Maybe, but Wallace will, and so will the courts. I changed my will yesterday. Everything goes to Matthew. You two get nothing. Well, almost nothing. Emily gets $1,000, for reasons she will understand." Emily gasped like I'd slapped her. You didn't." "Oh, I did. And when you find the copy I left in the kitchen, you'll see the date. Today. While you were out buying groceries for your new life." Brian's face twisted with rage. "You bastard. You can't do this to us. We've been taking care of you." I stepped closer, my voice steady as stone. "You've been taking care of yourselves. You weren't caretakers. You were predators. And you just got caught." Emily dropped to her knees, sobbing, grabbing at my hands. "Please, Dad. I made a mistake. I was overwhelmed. I didn't mean any of it." "You toasted to my death in this house," I said, pulling free. "You called me pathetic. A burden. You meant every word." Brian slammed his fist against the wall, his voice booming. "You can't just throw us out. We have rights. You'll be dead in a few years anyway. What's the point of cutting us out now? Because you showed me who you really are, I replied, and you don't deserve 1 cent of the life I built. I pointed to the suitcases. You wanted me gone. Instead, you'll be the ones leaving. Tonight. Emily's sobs turned to fury, her tears drying as quickly as they came. Her face twisted, her voice sharp as glass. You'll regret this, Dad. You'll regret turning on your own daughter. When you're old and alone, don't expect us to come back. I met her eyes, unflinching. I've been alone since your mother died. The only difference is, now I don't have to pretend I'm not. The silence between us was heavier than the weeks I'd spent deaf. Emily stood, her shoulders squared, her face a mask of hate. Brian grabbed the suitcases, muttering curses under his breath. Together they stormed toward the door, the bags banging against the walls. At the threshold, Emily turned one last time, her voice ice. You think Matthew cares about you? He won't. You'll die in this house alone. And when you do, everything you've done to us will mean nothing. I stepped closer, voice low but cutting. At least I'll die knowing I didn't raise thieves. The door slammed behind them, rattling the windows. The echo rolled through the house like thunder. But for me, it was freedom ringing. As they dragged the suitcases out, Brian leaned close, his voice low and venomous. Old man, you think you've won? We'll be back, and next time you won't see it coming. Then he was gone, the night swallowing his threat. I stood tall, knowing whatever storm came next, I was ready. I stood in the living room, my chest heaving, staring at the empty doorway. For the first time in months, maybe years, the air felt clean. My house was mine again. Their poison was gone. But as I looked around the quiet room, the packed suitcases still ringing in my mind, I knew this wasn't just about throwing them out. It was about reclaiming myself, about proving that even at 62, I wasn't finished. They thought I was weak, deaf, helpless, but I had beaten them on their own stage. The act was over, the mask was off, and I had won. The slam of the door echoed through the house like a gunshot. Then silence. Not the suffocating silence I'd endured for 3 weeks, but something different. Pure. Clean. The kind of silence that felt like freedom. I stood in the middle of my living room, staring at the empty doorway, listening to nothing but the sound of my own breath. Emily and Brian were gone. For the first time in months, maybe years, the poison had been flushed out of my home. I didn't move right away. I just stood there, letting the weight fall off me. My body shook, not from fear, but from release. I'd spent weeks pretending to be weak, helpless, broken. Tonight, I'd ripped the mask away, and they had no idea how much stronger I felt for it. Eventually, I walked to the kitchen. Their shopping bags still lay on the floor where they'd dropped them in shock. I picked one up, pulled out a bottle of champagne, and almost laughed. They'd bought it to celebrate my surrender. Now, it was mine. I carried the bags to the garbage bin, tossed them in without looking back, and wiped my hands clean. That was the last trace of them I wanted in this house. Dinner was simple. Eggs and toast. Nothing fancy. But it tasted better than any meal Emily had cooked during her stay. I didn't have to pretend anymore. Every bite was mine. Every decision was mine. That's what freedom tasted like. After dinner, I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat at the old oak desk in my study. Margaret's photo stared back at me from the corner, her smile gentle, her eyes steady. I picked it up, tracing the frame with my fingers. I did it, Margaret, I whispered. I finally listened. You told me not to let her use me. You warned me years ago. I should have heard you then, but I heard you tonight. The house was still, but not empty. Every creak, every hum reminded me I was still here, still capable, still mine. I didn't sleep right away. I opened a drawer and pulled out a fresh yellow legal pad. At the top, I wrote in bold letters, plans, not wishes, not dreams, plans. First line, call the bank. Remove Emily as emergency contact. Second, update my medical directives. Third, visit Matthew in Denver. Spend time with the grandkids. Fourth, take that trip to Yellowstone Margaret, and I always talked about but never made. I wrote until the list filled the page, then flipped it and kept going. For the first time in years, my future wasn't about survival. It was about living. The phone buzzed around 9. Matthew. My son's voice, calm and steady, filled the line. Dad, how are you holding up? I smiled into the receiver. They're gone. It's over. There was a pause. Then his voice broke slightly. I'm proud of you, Dad. Mom would be proud too. We talked for 20 minutes. I told him everything, the deception, the trap, the way I'd played Emily and Brian until the mask fell off. He listened. No judgment, no interruptions, just listening the way I needed. When I finished, he said, I'll bring the kids down soon. They should know the real story. They should know who their grandfather is. When we hung up, I sat back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Relief washed over me, followed by something deeper. Vindication. For years, I'd carried the guilt of giving too much to Emily, of enabling her every whim, of confusing sacrifice with love. Tonight, that burden was gone. I wasn't just free of them. I was free of myself, the blind, hopeful version of me that refused to see who she really was. For the first time in years, I let myself imagine tomorrow. Not the heavy, dragging tomorrow I'd come to expect, but one full of color. I pictured standing with Matthew and the kids at the edge of Yellowstone, steam rising from the geysers, their laughter echoing across the valley. I pictured teaching my grandson how to sand a piece of wood in the barn, the way I once taught his father. I pictured the porch filled with voices that weren't plotting or pretending, but voices that belonged here. My home, alive again, with family who understood what that word truly meant. That vision wasn't a dream anymore. It was a plan. I walked upstairs, stopping at the mantel on the way. The photos stared back at me. Holidays, birthdays, graduations, pictures where Emily stood smiling beside me, all false promises frozen in time. I pulled them down one by one, setting them face down in a drawer. Not out of spite, but because I wanted honesty in my home now. I left the pictures of Matthew and his kids, the ones where love was real. The mantel looked cleaner, brighter, more honest. When I climbed into bed, I expected restlessness. Instead, I slept deeper than I had in years. No whispers plotting in the kitchen, just me and the steady beat of my own heart. Morning sunlight poured through the curtains, and for the first time, I didn't dread the day. I brewed coffee, opened the back door, and stepped onto the porch. The Texas air was cool, sharp, alive. Birds sang in the trees. I listened to every note, grateful, every chirp a reminder of what I'd almost lost. And then it hit me. 3 weeks of silence had been hell. But it was also salvation. Because silence stripped away the noise and left the truth. It made me see what I had ignored for too long. Loyalty isn't automatic, not even with blood. Kindness without boundaries turns into weakness. And family? Family isn't who shares your name. It's who shows up when you're broken. It's who lifts you up, not who plans your downfall. Emily thought she'd broken me. Brian thought they could erase me. But all they did was wake me up. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was fighting, living, owning every breath. I walked back inside, grabbed the legal pad, and underlined the word plans twice. Then I picked up Margaret's photo and set it back on the mantel, beside the pictures of Matthew and the grandkids. The family that mattered. The family that deserved my love. Silence didn't destroy me. It saved me. And when I finally broke it, when I finally spoke the truth out loud, I got my life back. In the end, this wasn't just a fight over land or money. It was about something far greater: dignity, honor, and the courage to stand up when even your own family turns against you. Silence almost broke me, but it also gave me clarity. It taught me that respect isn't given just because of blood. It's earned through love, sacrifice, and truth. And sometimes, justice doesn't come from the courts or the law, but from the choices we make in our own homes. If you've ever felt betrayed, or if you've ever had to summon strength you didn't know you had, then you know this story isn't just mine. It's ours. A reminder that even in the darkest moments, we can reclaim our voice, our honor, and our life. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this channel. And tell us in the comments, what lesson will you take with you today?